What's up, guys? I just wanted to say super big thanks for listening to the podcast and Lockdown Universe for the past year and a half. It's been such a pleasure for me. I'm just going to send a shout out to everyone who's donated, and I just would appreciate anything that you can donate, as it'll help me buy more equipment. And I just want to do this for you guys full time, man. I just want to bring you guys more content. I'm looking at developing a video channel so that I can have a video channel to interact with you guys as well on YouTube and TikTok, and a few other platforms. So if you can, feel free to drop a couple bucks into the Anchor pot. You can just log into anchor.fm and go to Lockdown Universe and drop something there. It'd be super appreciated. Even if you can't, that's okay. But if you can, just a few dollars makes a huge difference. Thanks so much, and let's get on with the show. What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to Lockdown Universe, home of the bizarre, peculiar, and unheard of stories of UFO legend and lore. Welcome back, welcome back. Happy to be back. Hopefully you guys are doing well and taking care of yourself. So today, I want to enlighten you guys to the idea of a seed and DNA hidden secret facility. But it's not so hidden. But most people don't know about it. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about it. It's called the DOOMSDAY Vault. Okay? Sounds pretty eerie and, very, creepy. I'm sure there's better words out there, but you get the idea. So they call it the DOOMSDAY Vault, and it's located above the Arctic Circle between Norway and the North Pole. And therein lies the resource of a vital importance to the future of mankind. It's not coal, it's not oil, it is seeds and genetically modified plants. Germplasm is what they call them as well. So there's an excellent article on time.com about the DOOMSDAY Vault. I'll talk a little bit about it from here. Wikipedia doesn't have it has a lot of technical info, but I think a broad 30,000 foot view is better than all the technical stuff. But what fascinates me is that, when we think about the Arctic Circle, we know that there's a lot of hidden bases up there. We've heard about these over the span of our research into ufology, and we've also heard of Noah's Ark, right? And a lot of people think that Noah's Ark was the DNA ship where they kept all of the genetic material for recreating all of the animals and living life on Earth. So here we have our human storage facility where we keep millions of tiny brown specks from more than, get this, 930,000 varieties of food crops. I didn't even think there was that many different plants on the planet. That's crazy to me. And that's just food crops. That's not just plants, right? I mean, there may be millions of plants, but these are food crops. 930,000 food crops are stored in the Global Seed Vault in, get this name, Spitsbergen, part of Norway's Svalbard archipelago. So it's the huge deposit box, basically, for holding the world's largest collection of agricultural biodiversity, according to the article. It states that inside the building is 13,000 years of agricultural history. Now, why this is fascinating to me, I'm always fascinated with, the future of humanity, how we maintain ourselves, what that's going to look like, and it directly correlates into how aliens use our DNA to change and manipulate and do what they want to do with our DNA. We're doing that with crops, right? Genetically modified crops. So in this secret base, we also have the fact that it's the farthest north you can fly on a commercial airline. So, that right there, this vault was made, and it's not me saying it, this vault was made to withstand an apocalyptic event. Okay, and we can get into that in a second. But so why select a very northern location? It makes you wonder, right? What's safe about very icy areas? If there is global warming, right? Would it nuke? Could we potentially nuke out our overheat our seed secret facility by having it near the equator. So maybe having it in an icy area is smart. But it's been dubbed the Doomsday Vault, which conjures up ideas of an apocalyptic event. But it is made for a catastrophe. It's much smaller. It is the much smaller localized destruction and threats facing gene banks all over the world that the vault was designed to protect against. And that's why it was opened in February. What's the date of this article? There's no date. Interesting. Okay. So, but people actually, I believe this was built in 84. And it's been upgraded just recently. And so every 10 years or so, there's different populations, different countries, where they'll update their seed deposits in this Swedish bank. So that it gets updated as we get better developed plant life. So there are big and small doomsdays going on around the world every day, they say. Genetic materials being lost all over the globe. Now that's kind of interesting, right? Because we do have a lot of storms. We have a lot of destruction, droughts, things of that nature, where we don't have, our population safe. Not human population, but, plant life. They state that near the entrance to the facility, a rectangular wedge of concrete that juts out starkly against the snowy landscape is where the Doomsday nickname seems eerily apt or eerily appropriate. It was precisely for the remoteness that Svalbard was chosen as the location of the vault. It is away from other places on Earth where you have war and terror. Everything maybe you are afraid of in other places, it's situated in a safe place. Its only neighbor is a small repository buried away from the dangers of the world, the Arctic World Archive, which aims to preserve data for the world's governments and private institutions, opened deep in a mine nearby on March 27th. They have a picture of it here, which is pretty cool. They show where the Svalbard Global Seed Vault is built into a mountain, right? So it's like that Colorado NORAD base, right? Or the one that we always see in Stargate SG-1 that's built into the side of a mountain. That's exactly what it is here. They have the vault opening outside of the mountain. The rest of it has a huge long tunnel to the main chambers where they have other vault rooms located. So this thing can withstand a serious amount of erosion, destruction, any airborne issues. Everything's going to be underground, right? So it's fine. The entrance leads to a small tunnel-like room filled with loud whirring noise of electricity and cooling systems required to keep the temperature within vault consistent. Through one door is a wide concrete tunnel illuminated by strip lighting leading 430 feet down into the mountain. At the end of the corridor is a chamber, an added layer of security to protect the vaults containing the seeds. There are 3 vaults leading off of the chamber, and only one is in current use. The door is covered in a thick layer of ice, hinting at the sub-zero temperatures inside. In here, the seeds are stored in a vacuum-packed silver packets, test tubes, and large boxes that are neatly stacked from floor to ceiling on shelves. And they have very little monetary value, they say. But the boxes hold the keys to the future of global food security. Isn't that interesting? They hold little value, but they hold the keys to the future of global food security. And over the past 50 years, agricultural practices have changed, right? I mean, we know this, right? Technological advances happen. There's large-scale crop production that changes. Yields change. Sometimes we get the yields that we predict, and sometimes we don't. We've got the Farmer's Almanac to help with that. My grandparents were farmers, and that was their livestock. That's how they survived. That was how they made their living. You had years where you had way too much rain, destroyed the crops. You had years that were droughted. You had other factors involved, air quality, all that kind of stuff, right? If you had a fire, from the north or, that drifted down from, Canada, that happens all the time. That can cause damage to crops. It just depends, man. There's a lot of things that are involved in farming. It makes sense to do some farming inside where it can be protected. However, it's not going to get the normal light of the sun. You'd have to do it artificially. So, what they state here, let's go through some numbers here. It says that the biodiversity has decreased to the point that now only 30 crops provide 95% of human food energy needs. Only 10% of rice varieties that China used in the 50s are still used today. The U.S. has lost over 90% of its fruit and vegetable varieties since the 1900s. 90%. I mean, I'm assuming they mean like different varieties. Yeah, I mean, that's what they're talking about, varieties. I mean, like, not necessarily the category like an apple, but maybe they're talking about like the varieties of apples or the varieties of corn or the varieties of a pear, So that's why they're doing this. That's why they've created this. And these seeds that are lying in the deep freeze of the vault include wild and old varieties, many of which are not in general use anymore. So, you hear some stuff about like, ancient oats and ancient grains and stuff like that. It might not necessarily be so ancient because it's still being, produced. The ancient stuff is probably in this secret Doomsday vault. But they have 200,000 varieties of rice to keep us fed. And there are as many as 1,700 versions of the vault called gene banks all over the world. This global network collects, preserves, and shares seeds to further agriculture research and to develop new varieties. But the Svalbard, this one we're talking about, the Svalbard Vault was opened in 2008, but it was conceived in the 80s, and Sweden had used a coal mine up until 2008 to store these seeds. So they had the inception of what I was talking about, 84 before. They had the inception of a vault, but they didn't have the high technology that they do with this Doomsday Vault. But doesn't it make you wonder, we always talk about this. Thine who holds the power of the food holds the power of the world. Once somebody takes over the power of water, once somebody takes over the power of food, we are screwed, right? Because we won't have that power anymore. They even made it illegal in the U.S. to collect rainwater, at least, in the states that I know about. I don't know about other countries. Doesn't that seem silly? It seems ridiculous, right? They say, it's going to cause problems with the water table. Are you freaking kidding me? One person collecting rainwater, you could have everybody collecting rainwater and it's still not going to damage the amount of water that's in the natural areas of land, even in your backyard. If you had one tank back there, even 10 tanks back there, it's not going to do much, maybe a little, but not much, I mean, it's not in the farm, you're doing it in your backyard, doing it wherever you live. Collecting rainwater seems like a ridiculous thing to make illegal. But then again, we live in America where damn near everything's illegal. We have the highest incarceration and, land of the free? I think not, my friends. You know what I mean? So what's interesting is in this article, they also talk about concerns about civil war in Syria. And so a lot of countries actually have these vaults, but they're not as high tech as the Swedish one. But they want to leave it behind for future generations so they can have the capability to create and work with this DNA. Now, if you listen to my podcast, last year I did a podcast, 3 of them actually in a row, about a buried base, about a buried ancient alien base. I think it was in Romania. I have to go back into it, but I believe it was Romania area. And in this base, they discovered, the military discovered that it was the people that created this base were probably about 14 feet tall. And they had created these long tables and what seemed like kind of like study areas. And then once they sat down, it activated this database of DNA. and DNA that they could manipulate with species interspecies as well as plant crops. So these aliens were able to, and had the technology and the foresight to be concerned about plant life, about about living species life, and how the DNA would work within these areas and these arenas. It's very important, right? Very important. So it's just something to think about, right? We're not the only ones that have interest in DNA manipulation and the future of what we eat and the future of what we become. There's other species out there, 14-foot tall ones apparently, that have the capability to do that as well. So there you go, right? But yeah, moving forward, Russia has has a lot of these bases as well, and different countries share different seed types, different generational seed types. So it's not just one country keeping them all to themselves. They actually share. There's like 10,000 different species of peppers, so people are sharing those as well, and other foods that people want to share to want to make sure that we can survive any pending, biological attack, any doomsday attack, any environmental attack. So that's what we're looking for, overall. So important stuff, something to think about. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to leave. I got something else I got going on right now. So I hope you guys take care of yourselves. Stay healthy. Take care. Lockdown Universe out.